Hi everyone, I'm Dahra Pucher from Pathways Education. In this presentation, we're going to be covering Oobleck and the different states of matter. There will be a worksheet linked in the description box below, and you can fill it out as you go along with the presentation, or feel free to just fill it out at the end. Okay, so let's get started. So here's just an overview of what we're going to be covering today. So we're going to start by talking about what matter exactly is. So what is matter? Matter is everything around you. Even you are made of matter. It's defined as anything that has mass and takes up space. And then today we're going to be talking about the three main states of matter, which are solid, liquid, and gas. Okay, so now that we talked about what matter is, let's talk a little bit more about those three different states of matter that I just mentioned. So, like I said, the three different states of matter are solid, liquid, and gas. So let's first talk about solid. So a solid has particles that are packed closely together, and the forces between the particles are strong enough that the particles cannot move freely. They can only vibrate. So when you hold something like a cup in your hands, it doesn't fall apart when you touch it, right? It's pretty solid, and the particles are very tightly packed, so they won't move. So as a result, a solid has a definite shape and a definite volume. So this means solids can only change shape under force or when they're broken or cut. So like I said, a cup won't just change shape unless maybe you dropped it and it breaks or something like that. Okay, next up is liquids. So in a liquid, the particles are not as tightly packed as in a solid. So you can kind of see in the picture over here, the particles are more spread out than in a solid. So liquids do have a definite volume, but they take the shape of whatever container they're in. So if you have like a cup of water and then you pour that cup of water into a bin or like a plastic container, the volume that the water takes up will change to fit the plastic container that might be a little bit more wide but less tall than the cup. And then lastly, we have gases. So particles of a gas are far apart and move freely, as you can see in this picture. They're much less tightly packed than in a solid and less tightly packed than in a liquid even. So gases fill the shape and volume of the container it's in. It has no definite shape or definite volume. So in the room you're in, there's actually gas all around you, right? Because it's what we breathe in. So the gas, you can't see it, but it just completely fills the room. So it has no definite shape or definite volume because it'll just fill whatever space it's in. So here's a little bit of a summary of what we just talked about. So if you want, you can pause the video and kind of review this a little bit. Okay, so now that we've covered the different states of matter, we're going to talk about state changes. So what is a state change? A state change occurs when energy is added or removed, and usually this energy is in the form of heat, which causes the state of matter to change. So things will change from a liquid to a solid, or a solid to a gas, or a gas to a liquid. So some common examples that you've probably heard of state changes are boiling point, which is when a liquid is heated to a gas, so heat is added. Another example is melting point, which occurs when a solid is heated to a liquid. So again, heat is added. And then a third example is freezing point, which is when a liquid is cooled to a solid or heat is removed. So I'm sure you can think of some common examples of boiling point, melting point, and freezing point. A really good example of freezing point would be when ice is formed, right? Because water starts as a liquid and then you put it in the freezer, you wait a little bit, and then it'll form this solid that's called ice. So here's just kind of another summary again. So like I said, when a solid goes to a liquid, this is called a melting point. When a liquid goes to a solid, this is called the freezing point. And when a liquid goes to a gas, this is called a boiling point. Okay, so now we're going to see if you guys were paying attention. So we're going to do a little concept check. So the question is, what are the three states of matter? So this would be a good time to pause the video, think about your answer, maybe write it down if you can, or tell your parents next to you. And you can also go back and rewind this video if you're not sure, and and you'll be able to find the answer. Okay, so I'm going to assume you paused the video and wrote down your answer. So the answer is solid, liquid, and gas. Of course, we just talked about this. So solid is the tightly packed particles, liquid is when they're a little bit more loosely packed, and then gas is very free and free to move around. Okay, one more question. What is the name of the state change that occurs when a solid turns into a liquid? So again, you might want to pause the video and think about your answer. So this is called the melting point, right? When a solid goes into a liquid, melting point. So an example of that would be ice melting. So when you have ice just sitting out in a cup, if you have like ice water, usually the ice will begin to melt and it'll turn into water, right? So you'll have more water and less ice in your cup. Okay, now we get to do some of the fun stuff. So we're going to talk about Oobleck. So what is Oobleck? These are all some cool videos of what Oobleck is. And as you can see in this video, the person's kind of like walking on it, almost like walking on water, right? And then here they're punching it and you can't put your fist through, but then here you put your finger in and you move it slowly and it'll kind of act like a liquid. So it's almost like a solid here because you're allowed to walk on it, and you can punch your fist into it and it won't break. But here it's kind of like a liquid because it's moving more freely, right? So Oobleck is something called a non-Newtonian fluid. A non-Newtonian fluid has properties of both a solid and a liquid, like we just saw, depending on how much pressure or force is applied. So when you apply a lot of force, like stepping on it with your feet or punching it, it behaves like a solid. And then when you apply just a little bit of force, when you kind of just put your finger in it a little bit, then it behaves like a liquid and it's more fluid. Okay, so now that we've kind of talked about what Oobleck is and all the different states of matter, you guys can make your own Oobleck at home. So here's just some instructions. You can pause the video, make sure to have your parents' permission before you attempt any of our experiments. And yeah, that's it. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you have any questions or suggestions, please leave them in the comments below and we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Make sure to follow us on our social media to be the first to know when we upload new activities and videos. And then finally, please visit our website at www.guidingpathways to start your journey on a new pathway.